Hello and welcome to a Seat at the Table Leadership Conversation, the podcast where generations come to lead, connect, engage, and be inspired. My name is Mothathe Sewelo, and I serve as chairperson at Seat at the Table, and it is a role that I do with so much pleasure. Today with us, we have Dr. Xolelwa Zulu. Mangwenyani. Yes. Need to say the same. Double battle. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us. It's such a privilege to have you here. I think, you're many things, and I don't want to start with your bio because anyone can go on LinkedIn and read it. You're an accomplished scientist and you've done very well. But I think above many things is that you've always kept the door open for others to follow in the field of STEM, right? Now it's STEM. It's moved from STEAM. It's moved from STEM to STEAM, and there's been an incorporation of arts. It was science, technology, engineering. Now it's arts and mathematics. But, we admire your resilience in making sure that there's inclusion of young people and women in the space. And as part of our Women's Month series, we felt it fitting to have a young woman like yourself coming to speak to us. So welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you, Mothathe, for having me. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to share this platform with you, to have this platform with an organization that is full of heart, that is intentional, that is unapologetic about empowering young women. It is indeed a privilege to be on that, amplify that voice, join that force, and use my story to engage young people and put up a reflective mirror to young people who see themselves in me and embody evidence of possibilities for many of them where we come from, especially in underrepresented communities, in the rural communities and in townships. So it's really an honor for me to be here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Xolelwa. And, I always like to call you Doc because it really represents a great achievement, in an era where education needs to become more important. We need to glamorize education and show that there is benefit. We know we are in a country where unemployment is rife, but it's still such a key propeller for young people to be educated. But tell us, Doctor, because, you speak about underrepresented communities. I know from speaking to you, you come from one of those, but share a bit about your journey. Who is Xolelwa? Speak about that young girl. How do you dream about being a doctor? How did you even get there, and what drove you? What brought you to this place where you finally are an accomplished scientist? Where do you come from?
So I was born in Alice, modern day rural town called Edigeni. That's where I was born. That's in the Eastern Cape. I grew up there almost all my life. So I was asked a similar question the other day. If anyone knows anything about Edigeni, is that it houses the University of Fort Hare. And the caliber of leaders that have come through from that institution, we could be here the whole day, right? So I come from that rural town, right, that has a history of intellectualism and producing leaders. Even though as a young girl, I didn't know that, right? But the institution stood there as a symbol of what could come out of that town. So I was born there. I went to primary school there. My primary school was just across the road from where my home was, Esheshegu. That's what the name of the village is called. And I went to a boarding school, right? I come from a royal family, and our grandparents, even though they were not educated, right, they valued education. It was a non-negotiable, right? And I think from some of the history that has been passed down from generation to generation, our great grandparents and grandparents were part of the patriarchal system, right? Most of our aunts didn't go to school. They were married off at an early age. They subscribed to not educating a girl child. They saw it as a waste, because why would you invest in somebody for somebody else? Because when you came of age, it was a known fact that as a girl child, you'll be married off to another family, right? So they ascribed to those values. And I think up to my grandfather level, they did that with my eldest aunt, the firstborn of the girls, when my mother was born. But I think they realized the mistake that they made, right? Because with my second aunt, when it was time for her to be married off, I don't know what happened, but somehow they changed their mind and chose to send her to school. And as they say, the rest is history. From there, school and education became important. We started to see a pipeline of professional women in our family. So that's the kind of background that I come from. And as a person in general, I think I've carried that with me. That education is important. Education is a lever that you can pull to improve your life around. And I think, and especially as a girl child, because it just didn't become easy to get professional and have a career. I always knew that was going to be my path in life. I never always knew that it would end up here, but for me, it was education and nothing else. So that's the context that I come from in terms of education and the importance thereof.
Thank you, Doc. And I love how you speak about heritage and forte and what it represents. You know, you're dressed in your beautiful Xhosa regalia. And it's important, I think, for young people to know that there are great examples of people from their community that look like them and sound like them. And you really spoke about your family lineage and how that influenced where you are. But, you know, I would love to know, in terms of the STEAM field, you know, a lot of young people find it intimidating. We see a lot of young people dropping out of mathematics. How does one overcome that? How did you overcome that as a young woman from Dikwani, sitting there and saying, oh, I'm going to pursue a career in STEAM?
For me, maybe let me answer that from my experience first. I've always been curious as a child, right? Playful as I was, I took my schoolwork very seriously, because at the back of my mind, I knew that school, it was the answer. I was a playful child, but I took my academics very seriously. And maybe as luck would have it, I was inclined in that way, or gifted in that way, right? Because back when we were kids, I think I always cemented position number one across all subjects from very early on. Maybe from grade, in today's language, from grade 2, they always knew that I'd come in pole position, right? I might have not have known it then, what it is, what a strength is, right? But I think I played to it. I saw it as something that works, and especially when working at it, right? I think at some point when I went to high school, I had to choose. We had an accounting stream, an agriculture stream, and a natural science stream. And there's a story about how I ended up here, because back then, I think today they call it life sciences, right? We called it biology and physics and the likes, right? So it was natural sciences, but you had the biology part, the physics part, and the chemistry part. So for these two, my marks were very weak. Well, they were not that brilliant. But for chemistry, I always used to get 100%. So they would average everything out, and I do well still. So for me, that was an indicator in terms of what is it that my mind gets without even trying that much. It's just something I used to get, and I used it then to be my support in terms of doing well. So I think in terms of being intimidated, I went to an all-girls school, right? And I, looking back and reflecting on that, the only real intimidation was competition, right? From other girls, who's gonna come out tops. And for chemistry, there was just no question about it. And I think maybe for some other young people that find themselves in different contexts that are presented with different challenges that speak to intimidation, I think playing to your strength and the curiosity that you have about that particular thing, and maintaining your conviction around that particular thing, and closing out the noise. And I think of this example that, where somebody is super focused on something, and then somebody comes and says this and tells them something. Say, yeah, I can hear you, but can you see what I'm saying? So for me, it's that razor sharp focus, the conviction in yourself about what it is that you want to do, and what that thing is going to do for you, is one that will assist in terms, yes, the intimidation is going to come. Yes, the negative voices are going to come, that who have you seen who's done this before, right? And I think now with the advent of time and technologies, at least there are people that are coming up who have done this thing. But I think the most important thing is the conviction to want to do what you want to do and why you want to do it, and then closing down the noise and just carrying on with it. Because the sciences are like any other subject, right? If you're a curious person, you can find yourself, you can articulate yourself in the sciences. If you're a problem solver, that's where you can express yourself. And we need a lot more of problem solvers in society, and not only problem solvers, but problem solvers who solve problems in the context in which they find themselves in, right? Yeah. So science is important in that way, that we need more of us. We need more of those skills so that we can advance humanity, we can advance our societies, and take ourselves forward as a people.
Sure. You shared a lot of powerful nuggets, and, when you spoke about how your science marks or your natural science and how they were combined, it just speaks to the fact that you should not focus on your weaker areas, right? You knew that chemistry was where you were thriving. there were other two things that were dragging you down, but you focused so much on what you did well, which is a skill that a lot of people really need, right? And you speak a lot about how science is about solving those critical problems. Can you share a bit more about how the STEAM field, especially now as a combined discipline, is important and critical to Africa's development, and just maybe demystify it, right? I feel like sometimes we have been educated and we leave young people behind, right? We leave the young person in Dikwani and the young person in Attridgeville, and we just say these big terms that they don't understand. Maybe demystify that and also explain its importance in the development of Africa so they know why they should choose this.
Okay. So for me, Africa's development is centered on its people, right? The one thing that's going to take Africa forward is its people. Africa's people are young people, right? So that's who we are looking to for these solutions to the problems that we're looking at. If you're a young person looking at this, hashtag you are it, right? And in terms of the development, as it were, I look at it as socio-economic development, right? There's the economic part of it, there's the social part of it. The social part of it is the people. The economic part of it is how we translate those problems into economic opportunities that will take us forward as a people. You're saying I must demystify STEM, right? As I said earlier, there's problems that we have. Take a child, for example, in Hammanskraal who has been exposed to brown tap water for the past 12, I don't know how many years or months it has been, right? When like in science, when you want to innovate, when you want to create a solution, you must have the person in mind who you're building the solution for, right? Who are you solving for? What kind of issues do they deal with on a daily basis? What are their challenges in terms of their particular life in that context, right? So for me, art provides what we call creativity, right? It's looking at life in terms of patterns that have to do with our humanness, our humanity. And maybe when we do our science, this is a lens which we miss sometimes, right? And therefore we build and create solutions that are devoid of the human factor. So for me, the arts, the humanities should form a critical part, an essential part in terms of creating those solutions that we are looking for, right? Who knows better the context than the young people that find themselves in those? Who knows better what is their pressing need? What are those challenges and problems that they are facing with, except those people that are immersed in those particular contexts? And who better to come up with options for possible solutions that could potentially work? You know that option one won't work because their context. Option 2 will probably work because their context. Option 3 is the best of these because when all things are considered, and all things should be considered, but who should consider those all things? It's the very young people that are in those contexts. So when we build those solutions, we need everybody. And I think as an innovation specialist in my other head, we need different opinions. We need different voices to come up with solutions and perspectives in terms of that challenge. And I think in that example, I think it's maybe it's even a challenge to young people out there to look around their communities, find out what is it that's pressing, find out what resources that they need to bring about, even if it's a rudimentary version of that solution. Then you go ahead then and find other resources to make this a reality and put it out there to solve those challenges in the communities.
Yeah, that's very true. Hey, you say something very relevant about grassroots solutions, right? I think young people, we are looking at government, we're looking at older people because our government and our leadership is predominantly older in South Africa, right? But we're not actually realizing that we are the solution. And I love the example you made about Hammanskraal, because I was there recently and I saw young kids with brown teeth. And when I asked what's the issue, and they said it's the water. And that's a lived experience. It's not a headline in a newsletter or in a newspaper. It's actually a lived experience, and you know how it affects people. It affects our nieces and nephews. And that is not a laughing matter. It's something very pressing because it's something you experience. But, you know, you also speak about the demystification of STEM and making sure that young people, you said hashtag you are it, which is very relevant, right? To say young people need to be part of the solutions that we want to see. So you spoke that you're an innovation specialist. Now, innovation is a buzzword. Everyone is saying it. No one really knows what it is. Maybe can you tell us a bit more about what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Because every time everyone imagines somebody in STEM, you're in an overall, in a lab, you know, you're doing that, right? But we don't know actually what it entails. So maybe tell us, what does it mean to be doing innovation? Tell us what the CSIR does. You know, we passed the CSIR there in Pretoria. It's a big campus. You're wondering, why is it so big? What are you guys doing here? And what the role is in our economy. So maybe share a bit about that and maybe some exciting projects that you're working towards so that people understand that there are actually people that care about them and that government is actually doing something about some of the issues we're experiencing.
Thanks, Mothathe, for that. So I work at the CSIR, which is the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, right? It's a Schedule 2A organization under the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, right? And maybe as a way to introduce the work that we do, our tagline is touching lives through innovation, right? You ask whose lives those are, and I'll get to the innovation part. And explicitly, those lives are lives of ordinary South Africans. As I said earlier, STEM shouldn't be devoid of the social impact, the social outcomes. Touching lives, using technology, using innovation to translate products and services into everyday lives of people. That's what we do. And we are funded by the South African government. So we have a mandate to translate that funding into technologies that have a socio-economic impact, right? And an outcome. So what we do is invest that money into technologies, products, and services in a range of sectors, right? At the top of my head, I can think about ICT, for example, developing technologies for underserved communities where the signals of the big guns don't get to because it doesn't make financial sense to be in those. We develop technologies so that people in those underserved areas have access to data, to internet services. They can drive businesses from where they are. We invest those in health technologies, in agriculture, and maybe in health, I can think of vaccines, in during COVID, we saw how that played out in terms of our capabilities as Africans to be undermined by the rest of the world. And I'm proud to say that in that period, the SATT was a forefront runner in terms of deploying capabilities that have been invested in for a long time to develop the ventilators, right? So that work came from our organization, and we managed to save a lot of lives at that point with deploying, like from scratch, putting them together and then deploying them to hospitals to save their lives. And I think now currently we're busy working on our vaccine manufacturing capabilities so that we don't export any of those capabilities and have that in-house, so that come the next pandemic, we don't only have the infrastructure in our hospitals, but also the vaccines that are needed for us to deal with pandemics as people in general. Maybe one last example, in agriculture, for example, we are deploying or investing the public funding into what is called precision agriculture, where remotely you as a farmer, even small scale farmer, you can deploy this technology in a corner of your maize planting. It will tell you there what amount of nutrients are needed, if there's over irrigation on that plot of land, if you need to intervene by putting fertilizer, how much of it. And you can do this remotely from your farm, and it will tell you which parts or patches of your plantations needs attention. But we've got similar examples in defense, in smart mobility, in circular waste, and in the chemical sector. So that's the kind of work that we do, that it must have an outcome and outputs that are aligned with socio-economic outcomes of the country. And I think one other thing, that important thing, is that we look to work with small, medium, and micro enterprises, right, to assist us with industrializing this country through technology and innovation. And to touch briefly on innovation, you're saying it's a buzzword. Maybe in our circles it's not, because we get to do that on a daily basis. But put simply, innovating is new ways of doing things, right? New ways of looking at the same problem, but in another perspective, right? So that you can open up new products and new markets for that particular program or service that you have. But in essence, innovation is thinking anew, is thinking afresh, is constantly probing, constantly questioning, how can we do this better? How can we think about this differently, so that it addresses the rapidly changing needs of the markets that we are serving? So all of that comes from the user, like as you as a customer in the end. What are your needs? They're changing on a daily basis. How do we think afresh in terms of coming up with products and services that speak to you, so that we are able to have business at the end of the day?
And I mean, who is more better positioned to think about how to do things differently and better and new and fresh outside of young people, right?
Yeah.
And that is why we are making this call, and we're saying, come, young people. Look at professions that resonate with you in STEAM and get involved and be part of the solution. Join CSIR and just work towards, you spoke about saving lives, and that's critical. Everyone thinks of doctors and those kind of people, but you as a scientist, an ordinary scientist, are actually making sure that you're preserving lives in our country, in our continent, which is really great work. But you were speaking a lot about agri and tech. These are fields that are predominantly male dominated, right? And it's Women's Month, and we are focusing on women and the inclusion of women, especially in these male dominated spaces. And we like to say spaces are male dominated, but we need to get the information from people who are in the room. What has been your experience in this space? Is it male dominated, and how have you dealt with that?
Yes, the space is male dominated, right? And maybe that should be a challenge to the young people out there. It shouldn't be male dominated. There's nothing about the space that says females can't thrive in it, right? And I think it's a range of societal issues, right? Because I like to think of it as a pipeline issue, right? Because from high school, we don't encourage girls to take up STEM, because you're not going to rock up at UJ and say, I want to do a BSc if you don't have marks that speak that language. So for me, it speaks to the issues of role modeling what scientists look like, right? Encouraging our young people to take up those choices that have been labeled, that have had negative connotations in terms of accessing them and doing well in them. And I think secondary to that is the support structures in terms of infrastructure, in terms of mentoring young people, in terms of holding their hands while they go through this. And I think once they get confident in themselves and their abilities through hand holding and having people to believe in them, they can actually flourish in these spaces. And I think for me, the way that I've dealt with it, I think we need to look at that pipeline, look to grow it aggressively, continuously, without ceasing, because there are other structural matters that make that pipeline leak, right? Others are going to drop off along the way. But even if that's the case, if we have large numbers coming through, then we stand a better chance of still maintaining a large number of us coming through on the other side. I think that's why I'm passionate about STEM access, and especially STEM access to young girls, that will build them up from very early on. And I think there's other issues then, because you have your early stage high school life, then varsity life. And I think some of our cultural issues, especially when it comes to girls and young women, you somehow have to balance having a career and having a family. And in some cultures, for now, it's not supported to have you being in school like I did. I was in school for straight, I think, close to 15 years, with nudges and funny looks in terms of when are you going to pay attention to building a family for yourself, kind of thing. So at every point in the career trajectory of a young person, young Black girl that wants to do research, we need to have intentional wraparound support that is available for them, that can say, okay, fine, you can take maybe this short period of time, focus on having a family, but don't disappear from the radar or completely, because some of them just get sucked on and then never come back. And then some of the structural issues that we have is that support then comes with the age limitations and all of that. And then you think, how is supposed then to move us towards this, because we're comparing ourselves with people that don't have similar pressures and similar structural issues. So there's those structural, there's societal, but I think, as I said earlier, if you have conviction in your heart and in your mind that this is something that you want to do, you will do it. You will seek the support, and you will seek the mentors that will help you draw up a roadmap for yourself of when you can come out and go back in, what is available at the time when you're out, because it's not taboo to want to balance, to have a life outside a scientific career, and wanting to have a scientific career. You can have all of that. It may not just happen at the same time. You just need to be strategic about which periods in your life are more conducive for you to be in the system, and maybe some periods in your life would require for you to be less available for the system and more available for family time and all those activities and the support around that. But I think there's room to improve that support to reflect our demographics and what we want to do with amassing a career in STEM.
Yeah. And I just want us to double click on something very critical you spoke about, which is support.
Yeah.
Right? Can you walk us through what that practically looks like? Because you speak about being in school for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of debate even in our country around professional versus academic degrees.
Yeah.
And how sometimes people from previously disadvantaged backgrounds are not well suited for academic degrees, because how do you stay in school for 8, 12 years? You need to work, you know, you have generational issues and you have black tax waiting for you. So it's kind of like you have 3, 4 years to study, and everyone is putting money together to get you through so you can come back and plow back, right? What is your view around that? And what does the support practically look like? Because I can imagine I'm hearing 12, 15, 16 years. I'm like, and then when do I work? And then when do I get a salary? Yeah. I have my family to support, you know. So can you just walk us through that practically?
So there's two things, right? There is the professional degrees. There is the research oriented degrees, right? And for the research ones, a minimum of NQF 8 is required for you to be able to at least maybe teach at a university. It has become a minimum requirement, and in some cases they would take you with an NQF 8, and you must produce evidence that you are on your way to an NQF 10. That it doesn't stop there. Right. So that's the minimum requirement for a research career. And my view is that it shouldn't be a matter of either or, right? What we're trying to do is build ecosystems, right? And ecosystems, there's individual players, there's collective players that address a certain part of that ecosystem, and it's a continuum then if it's an ecosystem point of view. So we need those that will do professionalization of careers, get in there 3 to 4 years, they are done. And we need those that will stay in the system so that they get to at least a minimum level where they're able to make some form of impact. So it shouldn't, that, as I said earlier, it should be about the conviction in you. What is it that you want to do? How do you want to play in the ecosystem? Then align then with the requirements. And I think in terms of support, there are programs that support the research careers nowadays. I think of something like NGAP, which is the New Generation of Academics programs, right? Which understand some of these social issues that we are faced with, and especially as Black people, that you're not only there for yourself, there's people that you need to look back and reflect on and support as well, and bring them up as you advance yourself as well. So there are those, but I think what is also key from a personal point of view is understanding why you are on the path and understanding some of the sacrifices that you'll have to put in place for you to continue on this path. Like if I look at my story, I had to stay in the system and look at my peers, like when we're younger, getting cars, for example, you're still stuck on campus, right? People are buying property, you're still stuck on campus. Bro, what is it? What is wrong with you? Those are some of the sacrifices that you put in place because you have a North Star that is unmovable. You know what you are trying to do, and you won't move at the same pace as everyone else because you understand that we won't move at the same pace. We're not pursuing the same things, and we won't have the same outcomes. But there are gaps that need to be challenged, as I said, in terms of that support, in terms of the mentorship programs that are available, especially for the people that are unidentified, no longer young, but at the same time still need to play their part in the system. Those policies in terms of their age restrictions need to at least be revisited to reflect the fact that there are other priorities that people in pursuit of these opportunities and these spaces where they can make an impact have had to take a detour from. And we can still do it in a manner that is from a prism of an ecosystem, but it can be done. But it needs voices, it needs lived experiences, it needs co-creators who have been in the ecosystem and know what is working, what isn't working. So I think it's never ending. We're never gonna reach a point of, okay, there are no more issues anymore. But I think with the current system, we could potentially challenge those with our voices and our experiences and move a needle a bit so that when the next generation comes, they don't at least have to deal with the same issues that we have had to deal with.
Yeah, and so according to you, right, we still see a gap in women representation in the STEAM sector field, and especially in leadership spaces, right? And we spoke about how representation matters. What are your views around what more needs to be done? If there were 3 key things and you had a decision maker in the room, what would be the 3 key things you say need to be done to close this gap?
I think when it comes to leadership in these spaces, I think the ones that have made it, it's been on an ad hoc basis. It's just been happenstance. Nothing was said, okay, Mothathe, we see you. We will groom you, we will invest in you intentionally, and we'll get you ready for this kind of leadership. So for me, the gap is there. It's gaping. There's no intentionality when it comes to developing young leaders for leadership positions. It's as though young people reach a ceiling when it comes to certain things and they never break through that. And there's so many issues that get spoken about, this and that. They're not ready. They haven't done this. But no one took the time to say, for Mothathe to be able to move from this position in this period of time, they need to have developed themselves in this way and that other way, and make sure that they design interventions that when an opportunity then comes, Mothathe is well and ready to do that. So I think a lot can be done with intentional leadership development interventions for those kind of spaces, especially for young people. I think the key thing also is to accelerate that process, right? To not wait and say, she will need 5 years or 10 years. If we know that's how long she will need, we need to think about how do we make it that in 4 or 5 years, in half the time, she is ready to take that responsibility. So that is missing in the sector, and I think the role modeling part is also an issue, especially in STEM. Our people, we are not trained to be effective communicators with a broad audience, right? We know how to speak to our own people that speak our own language. We keep in our silos and don't network ourselves out of those cocoons that we've built for ourselves. So I think if we get, I don't want to call it training, But if we get comfortable with different audiences, with speaking our science in a way that is palatable to a non-scientific person, but has maybe a social interest in the same issue that you are trying to solve scientifically, then you open up a different community, an additional community that is able to assist you and support you to go forward, right? And role model what is it that is being a scientist that is part of a community, and not just the scientist that is in the lab solving those particular problems for yourself and no one else's. So I think that could be another intervention. And I think the third one is allyship, right? We spoke about this space being male dominated, but I think it's a challenge to those people that share the same passions, the same mandates, who are males in this space, to form allyships with women, accelerate their progression, champion women, cover women in terms of when they've been championed and they are there, support them, cover them. Yes, there'll be mistakes there and there, but just to account for those and make sure that our female leaders are able to learn from their mistakes. I think those two key things, if we do them and do them intentionally, with the intention that this is our main goal, this is what we want to achieve by this time, and put a measure to it that by this time we need to have at least these however many kind of senior leaders in the spaces, then we can do it. I think the intentionality part of it has just been detrimental throughout.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a very critical point, around the intentionality part, right? And your passion is quite evident. You're challenging the intentionality of upskilling young people into leadership roles. And I know that you do a lot of work around, paying it forward and making sure that young people and young women specifically have spaces in those spaces. So tell us a bit more about the work that you're doing to make sure you're creating space for young women.
So before we even get to the spaces, I think for me, what has become my life purpose is unapologetically for women. Unapologetically for educational pathways for women. And I think that combination brings us social transformation in ways that are unimaginable. Right. So that has become my life purpose. Right. And maybe it comes from a personal conviction of having been a young woman in a particular space that wanted to go elsewhere, but was presented with a few challenges in terms of that. But despite that, I think I managed to go beyond those challenges. So anything for me that is the intersectionality of gender, which is women, education and social transformation, it will grab my attention. It will grab my energy without even asking for it. That's how I align myself. So I do quite a bit, and I've done quite a bit of work. I think maybe it comes from the story that I spent about, I can't count now, but I think 12 years of my life in the system, in a higher education system, which will be another story for another day. But I think what I had decided then was that instead of being a frontline scientist, right, I would like to be an advocate on the other side of what people see as the end product, right, to enable, to facilitate, to make better those environments so that our young people that come through the same system know that system has been designed with them in mind, right? Somebody has considered where they come from, right? Has not taken where they come from and said, this is standard across. So for me, representation comes maybe from that personal point of view, that it can't just continue to be like this. And especially if there's people like us who have managed to wade through the system and are on the other side. So that's my personal conviction, that I always want to enable on the back end side of things. And I've done work with organizations like Black Women in Science, right, where we develop early career researchers in the issues that I've spoken to now. Yes, the academy trains young scientists in the core competence of being a biologist, a physicist, what have you. But we all know for them to be able to make it in the ecosystem, there has to be so much more that they offer than their primary competence. I think of skills like as communication skills, right? Entrepreneurship, right? And writing properly for different kind of audiences. So the work that we did then was like, we see you are a biomanufacturing specialist, but how do you talk to a bank in terms of translating this work into a product that can get into a client that they invest in? How do you do that, right? And for example, how do you, from what you've done at UJ, at your master's at NQF level 8, how can you translate that work into something that can result in a startup, for example, or product or a service? And communicating, for example, we're doing that today. I think scientists are trained in communicating in journals and publications and nothing else. How do we do that widely? And for example, how do we involve our scientists in policy work, right? The work that moves the needle. How do we interface with the lawmakers, for example? So that's the kind of work that we have been doing. And we have been putting these women into these kind of spaces and interventions so that on the other side, they themselves are decision makers in the spaces. And I'm proud to say, I think over a period of about 10 years, I think we're reaching close to 500 of those that have gone through that. And I think about 20% of that now are in positions of influence and are making the change. And the mentality that we have of pulling each other up as we go along, challenging the status quo, even when it costs you personal risk, professional risk, somebody has to do the dirty work. And that person that does the dirty work have a deep understanding of somebody did the dirty work for them. So it's not even like a question of asking. It's just like, hey, so it's really paying it forward, right? I've also been involved in mentoring, officially and unofficially, mentoring young people who are venturing into entrepreneurship, young people who are carving STEM careers for themselves, who are still fighting, sadly, some of these issues that we felt, but now with a bit of experience and networks, which levers to pull, then we can support those young people into a relatively, challenge is always going to be there, but relatively less challenging positions for them to be in. I also do work for Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World. We implement mentorship programs there. We encourage and put interventions for young people, young women in the space, especially early career researchers, to be involved in policy work, to be involved in technology development that is not devoid of social economic outcomes. We give them platforms to do that. We provide grants and fellowships and networking opportunities for them, and support from leaders in the space that have done that work for them. And it's been an incredible part of my life to have to use myself and my experience, right, to empower another, right, and see them thrive. I think the best thing is mentoring somebody and they come to you hysterical in the end. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do it. it's too hard, it's difficult, I want to give up, right? And then they come to you years later, you hold their hand, they call you at 12 midnight, and you attend to these things, and you see them thriving. You see them emboldened, right? You see them taking on these challenges and challenging authority with the same authority that you have imbued in them for so long. I think for me, that is just the greatest gift ever. And I think I have a mentor now, a mentee rather, who's just been accepted at VETS for an MSc. She was calling me the other day, hysterical. I can't do this. Oh my gosh, if I go and what's this? Present my proposal, the questions that they're going to, and I believe in them so much. They are so bright, they are so brilliant. And for me as a mentor, I can see them beyond that even initial stage of an MSc, because I know who they are, who they want to be. So for me, I see them as being the final product, and I'm relaxed on this other side because I believe that they can do it, and I'll be there to hold their hand throughout the process. What they're crying about is just small waters for me, because I've been there, supported through that, and I know what it is and how to support them. And I just can't wait for them to get to a place where I see them thriving and doing all these wonderful things. So that's just some of the work that I do with some of the young women that I lead.
Wow, like I'm smiling, my cheeks are so because you know what I'm hearing, I really am loving the fact that there's so much support, right? The science field is always kind of termed to be like, there are no women, there's no support, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know where to go. But you're actually saying there are institutions that are supporting women in the space. You are welcoming women in this space. You are passionate about developing women in this space. And you're saying, come, we're here for you. We will hold your hand and we'll figure it out together, which is amazing, amazing work. I have to applaud you, Dr. Xolelwa, because it's really unpaid work, right? It's hard work, right? Nobody's going to give you a salary or an accolade. And if you're lucky, you get a thank you, right? But we really applaud the work that you do. And I mean, you are at SATT at the table, and you do lead our very impactful Connect education program. And you spoke about pipeline, right? We know that a lot of critical decisions are made by young people while they're in high school. So we cannot wait for them till they get to work, right? And then mentor them and then give them grants. How would they know? They didn't study science. They didn't study maths. It's too late. Maybe share a bit more about that program, because it's a program we're so passionate about. We understand at SATT at the table, we want to build that pipeline of young people that come through the system and they're ready, they're empowered, they know exactly what they want to do. They have that confidence you spoke about, that they can resist intimidation when they're in boardrooms and classrooms. But maybe share a bit more about the program, why you're passionate about it and what it's all about.
So, Connect Education, right? We seek to impact young people, right, through providing platforms for educational pathways. We work with high school learners in terms of giving career guidance, right? As I said earlier, you have to have some conviction about who you are, right? And that conviction comes from knowing self and knowing self fully, what's and all, with the strengths and the weaknesses and the areas that need a bit of work, right? We don't do that with young people anymore, right? No one takes the time to say, who are you, before we give you the list of options and the universities that are there. That work for me really is just top drawer work, right? Because you get to interact with kids and they tell you, I like writing. I'm a creative. Right? And they tell you that I don't know, I've never heard anyone tell me how you get to be a professional writer. Right? So we take those kids from a blank canvas point of view, right? To put a mirror upon themselves. What is it that you enjoy? What is it that you spend most of the time on and you think, if I could do this for the rest of my life, I'd be okay, right? Then we talk about options in terms of what would be available for you to articulate yourself in that way of saying, if I had to do this for the rest of my life, I wouldn't have a problem. So we do that, and especially for underrepresented communities, schools in the rural areas. We're working with schools in the Northwest. We're working with schools in South Gauteng, Soweto, and in the East for now. And we're looking to expand through collaboration to Limpopo and the north of Gauteng. So we do that. And we find that with these kids, they don't have support because they come from these underrepresented areas, and some of the context in which they come from, right? School and education is not prioritized, right? It's not at the top of the list of things that they ought to do with their lives. We're launching quite soon a mentorship program in terms of somebody that's going to be holding their hands from their high school journey, their transition to university. Once they have made those choices and they're working towards what it is that they want to do for the rest of your life. And then they have some of our sit at the table professionals holding their hands throughout their transition period. That work for me is really, it's deeply personal because I never had that, right? I never had, and as I said in my story, it just so happened that I could align with my strengths. But for somebody else, that journey needs some form of intervention, and we're doing that with our kids. And for our kids to see us, right, to see somebody who has a STEM context and STEM background, and like, ma'am, how do you do that? Like, what is a PhD? Yo, I've never seen this. And then you talk to them in their language. They have your number, they WhatsApp you, they're available, you are there with them on the WhatsApp group. When they have concerns, they can just put that there and you are available for them. So that's what we do with the high school students. And part of our program as a whole is also looking to work at universities, right? And especially underrepresented communities, universities in those communities, like the one I came from, University of Fort Hare. And the idea there is that beyond developing you as an accountant, as a physicist, as a systems developer, right? Who are you in the context of your community, right? Are you a future leader that is connected to the issues that your people where you come from are grappling with? I think some of us learned this late, but with the work that we want to do with universities is we want to connect them to the communities, right? And as you are aware, SATT has other programs besides education. So we are looking to plug those young people in universities with the work that we do with SATT. We also want to develop their entrepreneurial spirit from very early on. As you said, the unemployment rate is so high. We need a dose of entrepreneurs at a large scale, but how do you do that if you don't develop it early on? And that's what we want to do with the young people in universities. And I think that the last pillar of our work is leadership development, right? Leadership of self before you even get an opportunity to lead other people. Who are you your competences, your aptitude, how you understand other people, how you should relate with other people. We have a pandemic of toxic working environments with bosses that have only know that they're educated and nothing else, and have no accountability for the way that they treat people. So we develop our leaders in those spaces, at university spaces, to be able to be self-aware, know who they are in terms of being connected to university, know what they need to develop themselves outside their primary competence, so that when they go out there in the world of work, they know that their primary mandate, beyond being a professional, is being aligned with society, is being aligned with societal outcomes, and play a meaningful role in terms of changing their communities, because they come from these communities. I think by default, then they have a responsibility to go back and plug themselves back in and lift others up. The last pillar of that is the provision of bursaries to these kids. We're working so hard then to secure resources so that by next year, come the calendar year, the academic calendar year of 2026, we have at least an initial cohort of these kids that have shown spark from our high school engagements, and those that we believe deserve a helping hand to transition from high school to university. And we've taken them through understanding who they are, what they want to do, and that which they want to do is aligned with what they are, and they have plans to give back to the community, then support them resourcefully so that they thrive in university. So it's a cyclical project that looks at from high school to university, then while at university, plug back to your community while developing yourself before we deploy you into the world to become a fully fledged, developed and ethical leader that the society needs.
Yeah. And I mean, it's when you say you're trying to develop young people to know who they are, I think we also spoke about this at our Youth in Dialogue summit in June during Youth Month, to say we are the generation that doesn't have a North Star. You know, the previous generation had the apartheid, freedom, North Star. And then we got here and it's like, okay, apartheid's over, but we're still kind of recovering, but then we don't know where we're going, right? And you're saying something so key about knowing who you are, which is something that we don't focus enough on, right? We know we have gaps in our education system, but knowing who you are and why you exist is really key to unlocking any potential you have, right? You can be a hawker on the side of the street, but you'll be the best one because you know who you are and you know what you're doing. And there's a lot of intentionality that you and your team are putting into this program and making sure that young people are actually set up to succeed. Because how do you know how to act in an office space or in a lab? Nobody tells you. You go to school, they give you all the educational tools, and then you go work someday. And you don't know what is decorum, right, in a professional setting. So it's very key, the work that you're doing. But maybe you can mention how people can get involved, whether it's organizations or people on the ground that just want to be part of the program.
We and I think I said this, we are a dynamic team of incredible young people. Shout out to my team. Those women, we share the same passion. We don't have to be asked twice about this, because this is something meaningful to each one of us. They show up for that work without being asked. And honestly, my hat's off to you. But I think there's room for more, because we're looking to expand our footprint and presence across all provinces of this country in terms of the schools that we are working with. So we are open to more hands and fit in terms of lifting the work that we are doing. And I think our website is available. It's www.as-att.com. They can sign up there and they can get in touch with us. Drop us an email. I think it's info@satt.com.
Admin.
And admin at ASTT.com. They can just drop us, I want to be part of Connect, and they'll be redirected to our team. But we are hungry for more people. We are hungry for more hands. And I think the key thing is passion. If you are passionate about the work that we do, if I tell you that our program only started in February this year and the kind of work that we managed to do in that short space of time, nothing else except our passion carries us in terms of delivering on such outcome and our dedication to the cause. So the only criteria that's there is that you must be aligned with the mandate of the organization itself, the program, and have convictions about wanting to empower young people through education.
And I think as your chair, I'm always inspired by the work that you do. And we also implore organizations to back you, right? Yeah. All of this passion is all well and good, but these kids need resources to be invested into them, which materializes into financial matrix. And we need organizations to contact us, to contact Dr. Xolelwa and pledge and say, we will stand behind this cause, because it's amazing work that you're doing. I mean, we recently partnered with Girl Code, right? Yes. And we'll be helping young women to learn how to code. Because we cannot sit here and talk about AI, talk about STEAM, and talk about how the future is ESG. But young people have no idea what that is. How do they choose those careers? Interviewing you, I've felt your passion, It's a cold day today, but we're warm because of the fire that's within you. Can you tell me a bit about who has paved the way for you, who has inspired you? You speak a lot about doing for others, but who has poured into you and created Xolelwa to be this Dr. Xolelwa that we see today?
Wow. So I think when I said in another mentorship program that I'm part of now, that I've never been formally mentored, right? Up until recently, which speaks to some of the structural issues we had navigating STEM. I think if I had to reflect on that, I think for me, it would be my grandmother, right? She is one woman at that time who's never seen an office, who's never had a job, right? Her job was to be a wife and take care of her children, but somehow she had a conviction that her children must go to school. And by the time we were there as grandchildren, it was just like a non-negotiable. I don't know what brought that on to her as a person, and I can imagine the struggle and the friction between her and my grandfather pulling this way and her pulling in the other direction, but coming on the other side with that conviction and managing to convince my grandfather that from here forward, this is how we're going to be and do as his family, as when it comes to raising children and the way that we will raise children and grandchildren. And I think that the women that made me as well, my mother and my aunts, were a family of strong-willed women who have taken it upon themselves to carve professional careers, to go to institutions of higher learning and empower themselves in that way. Just this weekend, we were celebrating my auntie's 70th birthday. and we're reflecting on some of this history and some of the challenges that they have gone through at a personal level to raise us and their own children into these people that we have become. I'm a sum total of those women, right? Because we have come from similar backgrounds, not the same, because I think things were better when we were growing up. But I think the lessons they have taught me explicitly, implicitly, and by the way that they have lived their lives, it's just given me that one little push to lock in my spine in terms of my personal conviction and drive to go against and go for my goals rather, with such a passion and conviction. And I think most recently I put up a post reflecting, because I've woken up to, not woken up, but opened myself up to more people pouring into me, because in our spaces, you are in your little corner, you're doing your own thing. You have to have this thing done, and you only have yourself to rely upon. I think of my former boss. She explicitly told me that one day I think you'll be a CEO. And I was like, what do you mean? Right? And she believed in me so much, and they would have difficult tasks at work, and she'd be like, I just give them to me. And she had she had an opportunity for me to report to her, because I was asked to act in a role that was reporting directly to her. I think we spent about a year and a bit in that role, but the change in my perception, in what I believed was possible for me, in what I believed was the next step for me, and the avenues that she opened for me, and the networks that she opened for me in that short space of time. And she resigned, I think, 2 years after that, but she still calls herself my forever boss, because it's like, it doesn't matter where you go, I'll forever be your boss. Even beyond that formal relationship of a working relationship, she continues to pour into me, to open her networks for and to me, and to talk about me to people that have nothing to do with me, and say, I've told this person about you, they want to give you a call. But I'm like, what did I do? So to my forever boss, you're out there watching this. This is for you. And then quite recently, I've crossed paths with Mothathe. I think, and quite recently, it's just been like I think over a year, because I think that the first sit at the table connect session I attended was in February 2024. I wasn't even sure where I was going, right? But everything that has happened from that day forward has just been like a massive acceleration of what I can potentially do, the spaces I've been exposed to, the people that I have been looking up to for the rest of my life, just a phone call away. Mothathe, I need this. Within minutes, no questions asked. You see these opportunities, you think, but I'm not qualified, I'm missing. Do it now, kind of thing. So Mothathe, I think I put a post the other day that my forever boss, which is, her name is Xolelwa, right? She was the initiator of the post-training person that I have become, right? And Mothathe has just come in and catalyzed all of that, right? So for the scientist, the catalyst just speeds up the rate of the reaction. If it would have taken 10 hours, with the catalyst, it takes 2 hours. So that's what Mothathe has been for me in a short space of time as well. I don't know if she takes no for an answer. If she's decided that you are doing something, you will do it. It's not a suggestion. It's marching orders. And I think she came at the right time in my life where I needed that, right? You know what you need, and somehow you're negotiating yourself, giving space, yourself time to say, maybe not now. Let me give myself time and all of that. But she just bulldozes you into what she thinks is aligned with you. And I think what she does for me is what I do for others, because in my mind, I see them as the finished products that they don't see themselves. And I think she acts from that position of like, this is where I see you, and you must get there and get there now. And for you to be able to get there, you must do these things and do the same this way. No questions asked. Just do them. So those are the women that continue to speak into me. And I'm in a mentorship circle now, officially. I think for the first time in my life, right? I have somebody that I can say, okay, this is my mentor. This person mentors me. And I'm in Yolanda Kuba's mentorship circle. She's the regional vice president of MTN. So I started that at the beginning of this year. And that has been another platform of intentional leadership. I don't know, maybe in my space, this is new to have such well-accomplished women believe in you so much and see things for you that you don't see for yourself. So for me, that experience with that, it's still going on. It'll be up until the end of the year. But it has positioned me in a short space of time as well. It has positioned me for my next level. And it has come from a person that has explicitly asked, what's it that you want for yourself? How do you define your next level? And then spending time with you and opening up their networks and people and resources to say, this is how you're going to do this. And you're going to do this even before the time, our official time is up. So for me, it's the women in my family, and it's the women that have accelerated my conviction and my passion and articulating that in the spaces and rooms which I wouldn't have ordinarily accessed, but they've put themselves and resources on the line to support me do that, and to those I am really thankful.
And you remind me of this saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And it's just that thing where God just positioned things at the right time with the right people in the room. And it's just so inspiring to see women opening doors for other women. You know, we break that stereotype that women are mean and toxic and all of that. But you've spoken about phenomenal women, very busy women. I mean, you know, our advisory board member and, you know, our mentor, Mom Try, extremely busy, you know, but takes the time to answer your WhatsApp and makes you feel like you are seen, you're heard, because how can Trifosa Ramano answer your texts or Yolanda Cuba or, you know, all the people you're mentioning. And it's not to put the names, but it's just to say such people that have really walked the miles. And these women are intergenerational, right? A lot of them much older than you. You speak about your grandmother, and I mean, our grandmothers were like the smartest people ever. I've never heard anyone speak of a story that didn't embody this strong matriarch, right? When they speak about their grandmother. How do you suggest that we create more of that intergenerational leadership link? Because they've walked the way, right? In Zulu, they say, indlela ibuza kulaba phambili. But we are now in the society where it's Gen Z and baby boomers and millennials, different, and we're all being cut up to say, no, you act like this, you act like this. How do we unite those people? Because we all need each other to go further. You know, you go further together. Yeah.
So I think for me, there's wisdom in embracing wisdom, right? And and it's only humility that will make you see that for you to be able to propel forward, you need to look back, right? For me, I think the wisdom of our grandparents was well ahead of their time, right? And I think what has worked for me in particular is to look at their lives constantly as a source of inspiration, that if these people could do so much with so little, how much more than me with so much that is available for me. So the fundamental building block for me is using the wisdom of those who have traversed the path, and in more challenging conditions, if I may ask, right? It's to tap into that religiously, is to use that wisdom as a sounding board every time a critical decision has to be made, to tap into that and check those decisions against that wisdom. I think there's also something to be said about reverse mentorship, right? I think you spoke about being heard, being seen, and being validated. That thing does gymnastics in the soul that nothing else can if you are heard, right? We have so much to say about Gen Zs and what they're exposed to and all of that, but I think there's so much to learn from young people, right? And especially from those that have traversed the path, right? So it becomes two-pronged. It serves two purposes. It's an opportunity to hear and see young people and validate them, which does something for their confidence, does something for their conviction as they go forward, right? If you listen to them and take what they say into heart, and they see you implementing some of what they have poured into you, right? To have the tables turned around in one way or the other. So that's being heard and being seen. The second part of reverse mentorship is also beneficial to those that have traversed the path, to look at the world anew, to have a prism or lens of how to work with young people, how to impact the boardrooms that they are in, so that they are inclusive to the voices of young people. Yes, they'll bring the young people in, but at the same time, with their weight of their voices and the weight of their influences, they form an allyship that supports that young person in those boardrooms, and then change happens in a two-way fashion. So for me, yes, mentorship is great. Wisdom as a building block in terms of moving ourselves forward as young people is a non-negotiable. Also reverse mentorship, learning from and forming networks that support young people in terms of using that continuum of exchange of ideas, so that we can deal with some of the challenges and issues that we deal with today.
Yeah. Doc, so as you're speaking, you're talking about pouring into others. You're talking about people that pouring into you. But what does leadership mean to you, right? You've said a lot of things about leadership and how you lead.
Yeah.
But, if you had to put it into like a short summary of this is what leadership means to Dr. Xolelwa, what would that be?
So for me, leadership is not the position, it's not the title, right? For me, it's influencing others to show up as who they are, and have the confidence and the conviction that they will be seen, they will be heard and included as they are. That's what it means for me. And it has, I have lived that value wherever I have been, right? To say I show up as I am, right? As the girl from Esheshegu, right? As the scientist that I am, as the advocate that I am, the passionate person that I am about young people, the passionate person that I am about education, all these things that make me me, right? And I seek spaces that align with that so that I can articulate that further. And the people that have been in my leadership influence, I think for me, it's for me to say it's okay to be who they are as they are, and to ensure that their voices matter as they are, in terms of making a change. So that's what it is for me. Influence people to be who they are, and ensuring that who they are and affirming that who they are matters, and it's required as we solve for whatever challenges that we're trying to solve for.
So authenticity.
Who you are authentically, so without having to doubt yourself, without having to question yourself. Know that who you are as a person, where you come from, baggage and all, is meant for you, and it's important for us going forward. It's important for our conversations. It's important for ideating. It's important for co-creating, because that contributes to the tapestry of who we are as a person. I look at this, if you look at a canvas, it's built up of little broken glasses, right? But if you know that little broken glass that is green or yellow came from me, and it was used to put something so beautiful, that's what it is for me. Be authentically yourself, and know that you will be included in this tapestry of something beautiful that can be used going forward. That's what it is for me.
Like it's always said, right? That no one can be the best you than you are, right? And nobody is your competition except the version of you from yesterday. But as we near the end of our conversations, I'm giving you a big billboard. Maybe in social media terms, it's a pop-up ad that every young woman is going to see for Women's Month. What would the message be on this pop-up ad or this big billboard that will be seen by everyone, all young women, for Women's Month?
For young women, and especially for Women's Month, I'm tempted to reflect back in terms of what Women's Month or Women's Day means for us, and especially as young people in South Africa, right? It's reflecting back to those intergenerational leaders, women leaders who said, it's enough, not in our name, we are going to do something. So that's the basis from which we move in terms of celebrating who we are. We celebrate that spirit of those women who took the bull by its horns and said, we will not take more of this. In the name of Abafazi, this will change, right? So that for me is always the North Star in terms of Women's Month, in terms of events for the month ahead. But coming to your question, for a billboard, I think for a young person watching this, I would say your curiosity is your superpower, right? Keep being curious. Keep poking holes where holes are supposed to be poked, right? Keep pushing the boundaries. Keep being curious about issues that affect other young people, that affect society. And that will open up opportunities for you to articulate and live out your passions and make a difference in society. We can't afford to be nonchalant. We can't afford to be laid back. we can't afford to not make a change. We really can't at this point. We are not where we're supposed to do. It's not yet uhuru. But for young people, they must keep pushing the boundaries, keep being curious, and use what they unearth from that curiosity to make the impact that is required of them to make.
Wow. Curiosity. But Doc, before I let you go, can you let us know what's next for you and where can people find you?
Oh, what's next for me? I wish I could announce, but I've just signed something exciting just yesterday in terms of my next. I think people who follow me on social media will be privy to that. But I think what's next for me is still the continuation of work in gender space with respect to women empowerment. It's still in education, but I think the combo there is social transformation for women in education. I'll be at the forefront of leading one great initiative that speaks to those elements of my passions. So be on the lookout. I'll be announcing soon. And in terms of where people can find me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm active on LinkedIn. My name is Xolelwa Zulu on LinkedIn. I'm not on X so much, but I think I try to post once in a while, once a week at least on LinkedIn. That's my poison of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doc, I mean, this conversation has been so inspirational to me, and I'm sure to our viewers who are watching this. You really left us with key nuggets around just being who you are, right? You pursue who you are proud to be who you are, and you're also helping others discover who they are and so that they can show up, right? But I think the biggest thing is that you be of service to others, because a lot of these opportunities that are opening up for you, and a lot of people seem like they look at us and they're like, oh, look at them. But it's like, there's a lot of work you do serving others. And that is how, God kind of opens those doors for you. So I always say to young people, to young women, volunteer and serve where you are. But I think my favorite thing that you said today was hashtag you are it. You don't have to wait for anything. You just need to pursue yourself, pursue your passions, and make sure that you are confident in who you are, and you will go places. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Dr. Xolelwa. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us. This is a Seat at the Table Leadership Conversations, and have a lovely day further. Thank you.